Welcome to episode 214 of Your Career Podcast. Welcome back to Your Career Podcast. It's been a little while since my last episode, which was with Kayla Dengate, the LinkedIn editor. And so I've had a little bit of a break because we've had so much going on with new clients and coaching and JobKeeper ending and people needing new jobs and all sorts of things that I needed to take a little bit of a break. But I want to let you know that before I introduce you to the amazing Kevin D. Turner, who is our guest on this episode, I'd like to tell you about the Careers Academy, because if you're feeling a little bit stuck in your career, and whether it's career progression, career development, or career transition that you need, you're going to find the support that will help you to take your career to the next level in the Careers Academy. So go to www.thecareersacademy.online, and the links are in my show notes as well. And check out everything that I've got there for you, whether it's for LinkedIn for career success, personal branding for career success, how to create a powerful resume. If you need one-on-one coaching or group coaching, I've got you covered. So hop over there and have a look. And now I'd like to introduce you to Kevin D. Turner, who is a personal and organizational brand strategist who provides the sharpest tools and strategies for your professional success. He's a writer, he's a trainer, he's a coach and a board member, and he is the managing partner of TNT, a technology and business-focused organizational and personal brand builder with deep expertise in visioneering, communications, culture building, and creating disruptive advantages. Now, I have to say, he's had a truly fascinating career history that has led him to TNT. And so let's welcome Kevin to the show.
Hello, Jane Jackson. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here on the podcast.
Well, I've been following you on LinkedIn. I've been so impressed with your entire career journey and what you're doing in your own business with TNT Brand Strategy that I thought I'd reach out to you because you've had such a fascinating journey and you've had such success as, founder of your own business as well, that I'm sure this will be a very inspiring episode. But to kick us off, how about we start with, what were your early career aspirations when you were a little boy?
And I like that you start there. My father was a VP of sales and marketing for a large aircraft industry. And I remember when I was a small child and my brothers and sisters, there were four of us, he would put us in a semicircle and he would practice his flip charts. And he would present in front of Congress to get them to buy aircraft. And it fascinated me then. And to me, the fact that you could create images and speak and convince people into releasing millions and billions of dollars into your company, right, based on this presentation and how serious he was about it. And he used us, I guess, as his audience. And it captured me very early on. I knew that was my destiny. I was going to go into sales and marketing. And, I guess that's where the seed began.
Mm-hmm. I think having an early grounding in sales is so important, isn't it? Because everything that we do in life, there is an element of sales in it. And I've always been a little bit fearful of sales because it just wasn't in my DNA and I've had to learn how to do it. And I still find it quite a challenge. But growing up in that environment and being able to hear your father present well, and then, we all want to emulate our parents, don't we? And obviously that played a big part because going through your LinkedIn profile and looking at your fascinating career journey, and we'll talk about that as well. You were National Sales Director at Sony for many years in the early days, yes? Tell us a little bit about your career trajectory.
Sony was an interesting part of, I guess, growing into business, right? My first, where I started out of college, Started at the lowest level you could, which was a retail sales associate, handing out brochures, and really moved into marketing, into more definition in sales and then national sales. And I often look back at many people I knew at Sony, and they're still doing the same job that they were doing when I started. And that was not me. I am one of these individuals that I constantly like to learn, and I constantly like challenges, and I'm okay knowing that I don't know everything yet before I jump in. So that's me. And it's probably why my career took many of the changes that it did during the process.
I think staying open and curious is so important, because there's no such thing as a job for life anymore. Especially, businesses, they're changing, they're morphing. I mean, just with everything that happened with COVID the past year, it's affected so many businesses, and those that didn't really stay ahead of the curve. And if people weren't able to adapt, they've ended up having to look for new jobs and feeling quite fearful as well. I know even for myself, I've always changed and adapted, and you certainly have, because from National Sales Director, then at Stone Holdings, you were VP of Venture Capital. Now that would have been an interesting role and good grounding in fundraising, yes?
Absolutely. And that was an opportunity that came from a national basically, they let everybody go in a division at Sony. And I had the chance. Sony said, you can come back and do what you were doing 5 years ago, or we can give you a package and you can go find something else to do. And I decided to take the package, take the adventure. And some of the things I was doing extra in my job at Sony, I was learning about triangulation of cell phones at that time, and data that was collected, and who has access to it, what are the laws guiding it. And that really took me into a venture capital group that was all about data management, and it was very exciting, and it helped me kind of understand a little bit more about how do you build a business with somebody else's money, right? Best way to do it. And really, how do you go out there and make those asks? How do you show the value in sometimes just concepts, that haven't made a dollar yet? And how do you get someone to invest millions of dollars into that to move that forward? And to me, it was probably the greatest takeaway that I had working for a venture capital group.
Mm-hmm. It's great to have that opportunity, as you say. If there was a package, so perhaps there was a restructure, so it's like a redundancy package, and you think, okay, they pay me to move on to something else. How good is that? And when it comes to redundancies, it really is your attitude towards it, isn't it? Because I think when I'm working with my clients who've gone through an organizational change that's affected their jobs, they just think, oh no, this is like the end. But it's not, because it provides you with new opportunities, and so often it's a blessing in disguise. And so with this, you moved on to another very interesting role as CEO of the Teachers. Is it called the Teachers?
American Teachers. Yes.
American Teachers. Yes. Now that is a very
and that really also came about the venture capital group that I was in. The gentleman who owned the group, it was a $600 million fund, decided that he was going to retire, and he gave us an opportunity to do transitions as well. And I wanted to go into an organization and completely turn it around. So American Teachers was a turnaround. It was an angel invested group where it had over, I think, 400 shareholders. So if you can imagine getting 400 shareholders to agree to anything, it was an interesting journey. And I learned a lot about how do you message within an organization so that everybody understands, what it is, and how do you get them to buy in? How do you get them to trust you? And to me, it was a fascinating experience. We did bring the company to a point of sale, but then the stockholders couldn't agree on the price. And at that point, I moved on to another turnaround opportunity. And I still look back and think about, the coordination effort it took to kind of keep everything moving forward.
And obviously, using your interpersonal communication skills and your influence and negotiation, all that would have put you in a really good position to move on to a new role as well. Because the next one was at Thomas Nelson as VP of Sales and Marketing, and then from there, the American Heart Association as Director of International Development and Global Strategy, and then into entrepreneurship. When you went through each transition, Kevin, how did you feel? And how did you stay, positive and in control of the situation?
I think it really is focusing your energy. You can internalize a transition and you can allow the fear to take hold, or you can take that, maybe convert it into nervous energy or whatever it is, but convert it into energy, figure out what the plan is to make that pivot, that move, right? And then line everything up and just use that, what would have been fear and angst and everything else, use that to focus. But you do have to let go of what was in the past, whether it was a transition that was forced upon you or one that you chose. And now you're thinking, should I have done that, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to think about the past. It's now all about focus the future. And if you can do that, and it's not easy, and I will admit it's not easy, and I know there were days I didn't do it as well as I should have, but you've got to refocus it and, take that, move that energy into getting the situation solved, making the situation better. And I think that's the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, sometimes it's quite difficult to do that, isn't it? But I guess when you analyze exactly what the skills are that you've got, and I think going back to when you were a little boy and watching your father and seeing how it was all to do with presentation, communication, speaking, listening, being a problem solver, those are the skills that you would have developed over the years, throughout your, sales career and then global strategy and everything else. And so when you transitioned again and then decided to start your own business, and so there was a turnaround, so it was a play on words with your name, which I think is just so clever, and TNT brand strategy, and you've been doing this for quite a while and very successfully. Tell us about, why you decided to bite the bullet and think, okay, I'm going to do this on my own now.
Well, it had a lot to do with the position before. I helped the American Heart Association go global. And before that, they had gone global by mistake, and they were absentee landlords, shall we say. And I really put together the plan to establish them in offices within the rest of the world. So we set up Belgium, Hong Kong, United Arab Emirates, Puerto Rico for Latin America, and we serviced the world. And we hired people and we moved that forward. It was both an opportunity and an issue. I was traveling 80% of my month. I was home one weekend a month, and I was usually on the wrong side of the clock and trying to raise a family. I loved everything I did there, and the people that I met around the world were incredible. I'm still in contact with many of them. They still keep telling me, when are you going to hire me again to do something? But just the sheer energy that it took to do as much traveling as was required to make all that happen, I couldn't keep doing it. And so I really wanted to say, what can I do? What can I do to step away and take this knowledge I've built over the years and kind of assess that knowledge of what is, what resonates with the market, right? What are they willing to pay for? And then create my own consulting practice. And, I enjoyed that tremendously. Again, it took me out more than it should have kept me at home. You would go leave on a Sunday night and come back, on a Friday night, and at least you were home every weekend, but it wasn't what I needed, And so I really had to look at that and say, what can I do to, again, keep me home, and that was the next point of creating TNT brand strategist. And it gave me an opportunity also to work with my wife, who is a brilliant writer. And, we were able to kind of combine the two things that we do the best, right? Kind of the yin and yang. We're very different. We're able to combine that to create, I think, just an energy and a solution to some needs in the market around personal and organizational branding. And it made sense. And so, we took that next step.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect partnership, really, because, you're the strategy guy. And if your wife is the creative, putting that together, it makes a lot of sense. And also, if 80% travel is a huge amount of your time, and when you're a father and a husband and brother and son, and there are so many family responsibilities as well, and not being there, it's really quite tough, isn't it? I know what it's like. I grew up as an expat brat, I suppose you could call it. There you go. And having lived and worked in many different countries, and then also having a husband who traveled a lot as well, it's really it's tough. It's tough on relationships too. And so now being able to work together, that would make such a difference. Now, you've also lived and worked in many countries. So you've got a global outlook on life. You've lived in the US, and you're there now in Dallas, and in Switzerland. You've lived in Germany and in Japan. So tell me about your international experiences and what you thought about this sort of global lifestyle.
I have always, as a child, I grew up moving. I even had 3 high schools in 3 separate states. So most people don't do that to anybody, right? And so to me, finding kind of new lands, new people, new adventures like that, very exciting to me. And I love understanding how people see things differently, interpret things differently. We're all very similar, but sometimes the way we take our inputs is very different. And to be respectful of that, to enjoy that, is something that I think working and living internationally helped me kind of fine-tune that. And I love it. I truly enjoy that part.
Mm-hmm. I think traveling is so important because it throws us into lots of different cultures. And I'm half Chinese. My mum's Chinese, dad's English. And so I've got that sort of combination of understanding, the Eastern way and the Western way as well. But being able to travel and live in different countries, and you can absorb that culture, it makes us so much more aware and accepting of different ways of thinking, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and certainly puts you into a very good position when you're working globally now, like with the brand strategy that you do. Can I ask you two questions? One will be about setting up business, founding, and the other one is about as a mature age worker. Okay, so 2, can we start with the mature age first? Because I coach a lot of people who are going through career transition, very often in midlife or later in life, and they're concerned and they say, oh, Jane, will I ever get another job because I'm a certain age? And of course they can, because it depends on their attitude. But what would your advice be for mature age workers going through a transition, thinking about either the next job or the next thing that they could do? What would be the best strategy for them?
I first think that age shouldn't be about years, right? To me, you're young if you're open, if you're creative, if you're willing to relearn things in that sense. To position yourself that way changes how people see you in age. And I think that's really important to know. My father, and we talked about earlier, and my mother both consulted until they were 92. And so,
Wow, I like that.
You don't have to stop if you don't want to stop. I always tell people, though, if you are trying to get into a company that has a culture that is youthful and that seems to be all they hire, don't waste your time. If you can get in or even get to the interview, what's going to happen? You're basically going to spend a lot of time you're never going to fit. You're not going to change that culture. So focus where they want you, where they respect you, where they know the knowledge that you've gained over the years and your ability to learn new things. That's where you want to focus. And there's a lot of opportunity for that. And it may even be in the sense of creating your own opportunity. I don't think you have to go work for somebody at a certain point. You have enough knowledge that you can create what you want to have.
We're 100% on the same page there. It's a matter of fit as well, because if there's constantly a barrier and no matter what you do, you're not getting there, what's that telling you? It's like it's not going to work. And the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? So you have to start to get creative. And if you really want to do is not forthcoming, then you've got to start to reinvent. And there's nothing better than starting your own business, right? So as a founder, this leads very nicely to the next question. So if someone is starting up their own business and they need an injection of capital, and because over the years you have, in your working life, you've raised over $25 million US, either in crowdfunding or venture capital, what would your advice be for people who need some cash in order to get their business up and running?
I would always first say, try not to. Try not to need the money. Try not to have to go out. But there are certain situations where it makes sense. And especially if you've proven, I guess, the product or the service, you've proven it, and now you want to scale. That to me is a different perspective. I do like some of the thoughts around crowdsourcing, depending on what your product and service is, where you can get people to kind of invest in you small amounts, where you're trading off maybe exposure or events or naming of products or whatever that might be. There's creative ways that you can do that. And I think people need to start looking at that. Venture capital, the purpose of a venture capitalist is to basically get as much as they can for their dollar. And it can be a brutal process. So people have to be aware of that. And I just think, although I've done quite a bit of it, I don't normally suggest people make that the first option.
It's almost like putting a barrier to setting up their own business. And if they're able to self-fund it, or else, really run it on a shoestring initially just to see if it will work. And
you're always better if you own it all.
Yeah, that's right.
Ultimately, right?
Yeah, and also, say if you set yourself up as a consultant and you've got an area of your own expertise, all you really need is a laptop and a phone and a lot of determination, and then you can get on with it. And if you've got sales ability and you can talk and develop good relationships and authentic relationships too, don't you agree? I think that's the most important thing. What I found is that on LinkedIn, it's such a beautiful platform to meet amazing people. I mean, this is how I met you. I just saw one of your posts one day, and I was so impressed. I thought, wow, this is really interesting. Very detailed posts you provide. So you're very generous with your thought leadership. Tell us about TNT brand strategy.
It's had a natural evolution in the sense that it really started as a side gig, shall we say. Something I did initially to give back. I used to do presentations for groups in transition, 600-700 people who were trying to learn how to use, let's say, LinkedIn to find their next job. And they wanted to know the features, but I wanted to take them beyond that into how do you create your own brand to land through that process. And, it started as that. It's kind of a give back. You do a lecture to 600-700 people, and all of a sudden you get 10 phone calls that week going, Kevin, what did you mean when you said? And you're thinking, I have no idea, but let's talk about this. And ultimately that ran into, well, could you help me with that? And through that process, and maybe it's a reward for doing it for the right reason, right, to help people, it came back and it started to build. And been really doing what I do at TNT, I've been doing since 2005 when I joined LinkedIn. I was one of the first group of the first million in, and it was just interesting to see it evolve, to take on, and to go, you know what, we could actually create a business out of this. It's here, it's available. But I like the same thing that you like about LinkedIn, and that is you can be collaborating with people, and then you're like, oh, wow, they're in New Zealand, or they're in Canada, or they're in Argentina. You sometimes don't even realize this kind of global community that you're working with within LinkedIn, and the just bright and brilliant people everywhere. And it's one of the things that I think I fell in love with LinkedIn very early on because of that potential. And if anything came out of 2020 of any benefit, is it really helped the rest of the world understand that there is this kind of digital world, right? That you don't have to get on an airplane. You don't have to leave home. You can communicate, collaborate, build things with people from all over the world. So to me, that I guess I knew that early, and it became the basis of TNT. And I think that sometimes your best ideas you discover in the process.
It really is through the connection and the networking. And now there's this new platform, Clubhouse, that has come about. That's all audio. It's like talkback radio meets podcasting, which I'm learning about at the moment, which is amazing. And you're on it too, but because it's so new, I think everybody's really learning. But I can see a great collaboration there on Clubhouse with you, Kevin. And I think your handle is Kevin D. Turner, right?
Yes.
On Clubhouse, and mine is Jane Career Coach. So if anyone happens to be on Clubhouse, if you're listening and you're on Clubhouse, go and follow Kevin and follow me, because there may be, I'm going to ask Kevin after this podcast interview, a collaboration opportunity. Okay, as well as of course on LinkedIn, which is our main platform. But so, where can people find you, Kevin, if they, obviously on LinkedIn, so you need to look for Kevin D. Turner. But what about your website? Tell us, and I will add that into our show notes.
What is fascinating is, yes, I have a website. I took my website apart. I really focused everything within LinkedIn. And for TNT, the website is really a company page on LinkedIn. And my website, which would be tntbrandstrategist.com, now just forwards to LinkedIn. And so it is a big piece of my business. So it makes sense to be there where the business is. And I have not had anybody ask me, can I go to your website? Because everything I do, the values that I try to bring forward and share, and the information and pricing, all that stuff, it's all on LinkedIn. Whether it's on my profile or on my business page, it is, to me, it's, I guess, its own little world in that sense. And I haven't looked back, and I often think about, should I gen that site back up and start putting other content on it? I'm just not ready to do it yet.
Well, with over 30,000 followers, you certainly have people landing on your profile a lot. So actually, that's a good strategy, Kevin, because that's where you live and breathe, and how you help people with their branding strategy as well. It makes sense to have everything on LinkedIn. So
much like LinkedIn, I don't want to send them somewhere else.
Yeah.
I might not get them back.
Excellent strategy. So to find Kevin, just look for Kevin D. Turner on LinkedIn, and also follow Kevin for sure, because there are so many valuable articles that I've read, and the posts that you share that have really prompted me to reach out to you and get to know you as well. And today it's been lovely, Kevin. I'd love to talk to you all evening, but I know it's starting to get late. But thank you so much for coming on Your Career Podcast. This is a very valuable episode, and I look forward to some collaborations on Clubhouse as well.
Sounds good.
Take care. Thank you, Kevin.
Take care. Bye-bye.
If you enjoy Your Career Podcast, please hop over to iTunes and leave a review, because that's how we get to reach more people. And if you need help in your career, go to www.thecareersacademy.online, where you'll be able to find lots of online programs as well as one-on-one coaching with me. See you soon.